Thank you, Federico, for your intervention and great presentation on what is happening in Africa as regard to the COVID containment. I think the key takeaways from your presentations is about being collective, working together, solving the local problems with the local solutions, and hopefully they're going to be scaled up. And maybe Africa going to bring some great innovations to the rest of the world. But coming back to the more holistic approach, we see that there's dynamic workforce. We see that there's a very entrepreneurial spirit. And I just read a report on fourth industrial revolution, where actually the South African president said that Africa is a continent of entrepreneurs. What we, from the world perspective, what we can do, how we can support Africa, what is the purpose, why we are doing a great work there on the ground, let's say by the World Bank. I would like to ask Diletta Doretti from World Bank, and she's based in Mali, so on the base in Africa, to talk about the World Bank initiatives in Africa. And most importantly, as regards to digitalization, I think African Union and World Bank have this great initiative of the moonshot. So maybe you can describe what is happening there in digitalization as well. Diletta?
Thank you, Eleva, and good morning, good afternoon, buon pomeriggio a tutti. It's really a pleasure to be in this panel, and I would like to... Oh, sorry, I keep hearing myself. Is that okay? But just say it's a real pleasure to be in this panel because entrepreneurship and innovation is something that is very dear to my heart, but is also at the center of the World Bank strategy for Africa. As Yeva was mentioning, the World Bank and the African Union have passed about 2 years ago what is called the Moonshot Initiative. So recognizing that many African countries have missed out on the manufacturing revolution, the digital revolution is actually what could really help African countries leapfrog from the current status to a much more advanced economic reality. And the goal of this moonshot strategy, which is implemented both at regional and country level, is to help digitalize the economies of all the African continent by 2030, which is extremely ambitious, especially if you think about the context of some of the countries where Francesco and myself operate in the Sahel, which are less developed than South Africa or Kenya or other parts of East Africa. The focus of this strategy, going back to what Yeva was saying of the holistic approach, really looks at the entire ecosystem. So starting from the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure that can maybe be missing, but also going to the topic of this session, how can we support homegrown entrepreneurship? And how can we build the skills of the young population? Because a lot of it, Africa is a very young continent. So how can we use innovation, digital economy to really create a new cadre of trained professionals that can enter the market and become entrepreneurs themselves? What I would like to talk today very briefly is a series of activities that we've been deploying in the Sahel region thanks to the support of ISEX. And they go very much in line with what Francesca was talking about. So how we support homegrown entrepreneurship. And this has been done, I would just quickly go through 4 different types of intervention. First one is working at different country level with local incubators, accelerators, fab labs, and other centers to spur local innovation. So there's a lot of young people that have ideas, but they don't have the tools. They don't have access to equipment. They don't know how to do it. And working with local intermediaries, we help them train in developing a business plan, developing marketing strategies, specializing their competencies so they can really become, and it's great to hear being preceded by the COVID example, you see there's a lot of homegrown solutions that don't need to be imported, but they can be actually exported or customized to the local context we all operated in. The second one, which goes back directly to the moonshot strategies, it's identifying at each country level which are the main challenges and constraints to digital economy. I think something as an organization we've been reflecting, we cannot take a cookie cutter approach that one size fits all and we should do this and we should do that. So it's very important to start with a rigorous diagnostic and understanding why digital economy or digital development is more advanced in a context like Kenya, for example, or South Africa, and might be less developed in a country like Mali, where I work in, or even just by a difference between Senegal and Mali, which are still West African countries. And that depends on a series of different factors. Mostly regulatory reforms are not in place, but also just lack of access or prices of telecom operators, and not the presence of internet in rural areas, which really limits how much digital transformation can happen. The third point, which I think is very relevant to the growth of entrepreneurship in this continent, is working with the government, which is what the World Bank does, in putting in place reforms and strategy to support entrepreneurship. I think if there's not a legal framework that can make homegrown entrepreneurship grow, and that starts from having tax incentives to having a seed funding allocated for startups, entrepreneurship will never grow, will always remain at the infant stage. And it's very actually preparing for this session. I was very pleased to know that Italy, our country, my country of birth, has been the first one to pass the Startup Act. And now this model is being expanded and replicated and uptaken by many African countries. Exactly because coming from Italian reality, where a lot of entrepreneurs or SMEs are operating in the informal, there's been a need to recognize that status. And there's been a need to allocate resources and provide certain incentives that would make SMEs, entrepreneurs come out from the informal sector and have that growth. And my last concluding point, I know we are many and don't want to take a lot of the time. The last concluding point, we have been focusing on more mature companies. Let's call them the unicorns of Africa. And how can we match them to different programs in East Africa and West Africa, Africa Excel and Excel Africa? How can we match them with European or international investors? Exactly going to the point that Francesco was making at the beginning, there's a lot of great solutions. A lot of them are in the digital space, whether they are digital platforms, but also health solutions, which could be exported, that work very well and that could be either replicated, so from Senegal to Benin to similar context, but also to other countries that might
Partiamo da
have
quei comuni
similar
tappi di bottiglia, ci spiegano in una scuola romana.
Questi tappi vengono triturati
sorry.
e pronti all'uso.
Una catena di montaggio
And
usano proprio bambini di 7-8 anni
so that was
in
my
alcuni
concluding
impegnati
point. Maybe it was
volontari
the time I
genitori
needed
stanno
to
lavorando
stop.
ad un progetto ambizioso da
But
spedire
I
in
was
Africa
saying,
che cambierebbe il destino di tante
oh,
persone. Costruire pezzo per pezzo una
apologies.
macchina che realizza
And I was
protesi
saying that to me is very relevant, going back to the topic and the focus of this panel, how we connect and we match local African
prima
solution with
scappante
European
produzione
investors
servizi, la
and vice
materia prima,
versa.
applichi il
So
calcolo, il
going
sistema
back to the
diretto e
transfer of
l'obiettivo
knowledge and
praticamente
the
si crea.
importance of growing
50
here and sharing
partite
from both
così.
sides.
Questa è una protesi che
I'll stop here
consente a un
and I'll be
bambino o
happy
un
to take more
adulto
questions.
di poter ricominciare per esempio a